Good afternoon. Welcome to my broadcast, Dab Chat, with me, your host, Davina. I am going to be talking about Cracker Barrel, Madonna, and constitutional democratic republics today. And I'm going to be leaning into the troop that people like conspiracy theories. So I've got some red string to connect these items. I'm looking at the screen and thinking maybe I should have used bigger font. But in any case, let's look at what I have under Madonna, because I'm going to connect Madonna and the increasing wins in a culture war sense in which women can be free to talk about WAP, wet ass, wet someone, wet things that pertain to women's full and frank expression of their selves, and the cultural pushback, which has been for some people to say that's too much. That's too much freedom for women. We preferred a more hierarchical type of system where women feel ashamed, can be bullied into being handmaidens within a relationship. And there's a dynamic of give, give, and you accept the protection of a man that you need because you can't legally have a job if you're married, and you can't have a job once you're pregnant, etc. When a time when there weren't many legal protections for women, and women owed men and were expected to act gratefully for financial support, as opposed to now when women can have jobs, have legal protections against being fired if they fall pregnant, etc., etc. So here we have one of the consequences of that pushback against women's full and free expression. So Madonna being sexy also relates to there now being a significant cost to women from the success of a long-term Republican campaign to wind women's rights back in favor of promoting themselves falsely as saviors of the unborn. It actually causes significant harm to children if their parents have been forced to give birth to them against their will, because pregnancy is hard, labor is hard, looking after children is hard. And if the state compels you against your will to proceed with a pregnancy which you wished you'd been able to terminate, and potentially even risked your own life to terminate it with a backyard abortion, then the future of that child, their ability to access medical care, emotional security and stability, that's all compromised. And it's not to say the state could force anybody to get an abortion either. That's happened a lot during history too. There's been forced abortions pushed on people through government campaigns of eugenics, which are racist campaigns to sterilize or push people of color, American Indian, Native Americans, my apologies, or other people into being sterile against their will, being sterilized when they were seeking an operation for adenoid removal or tonsil removal. And there've been documented cases of 14-year-old girls who were promised surgery for one medical problem, only to find out that without their consent, whilst they were under anesthetic, doctors enacting a white supremacist eugenics agenda took away their capacity to have children in the future. So here we have murky access to medical care for women, because right now Roe v. Wade has been overturned. And if you believe the lie that the Civil War was fought over states' rights, then maybe you believe that Republicans are promoting state rights when they allow different gerrymandered district elected Republican politicians to remove women's access to timely medical care, whether it be for a needed abortion or an incomplete abortion that requires a dilation and extraction procedure, which is a needed medical procedure to stop women from contracting an infection at a level that could kill them, a septic uterus, uncontrolled hemorrhaging, etc. There are a lot, hi Christopher, there's a lot of medical problems that are not tangential to pregnancy that can be a sequelae of pregnancy. Women are being sent home to bleed at home from hospitals, where hospital lawyers are saying, yeah, it's dicey whether or not you can treat this person yet, because the doctor might not be significantly sure that a woman's life is in danger. So if you lose some more of your body's total blood volume, then perhaps we will feel more conviction in our sense that your life is immediately at risk, and we can take action to terminate your pregnancy for you and thereby save your life. Of course, if a woman in a stage of pregnancy before 24 weeks has a medical issue, then neither the baby nor the mother will survive. And that's the same way in which the Republican Party is prepared to gamble with women who receive diagnoses of cancer whilst pregnant, or women who aren't even pregnant but need certain medications that can potentially be abortifacients, i.e. cause an abortion, cause a spontaneous miscarriage. And those women are finding that pharmacists are increasingly refusing to fulfill their prescriptions for drugs such as methotrexate, because they say, well, it could cause a miscarriage. You're not pregnant, but the rights of the unborn child have been elevated in this current climate at your expense. And they are following through with what is the implicit agenda of the dismantling of Roe v. Wade protections for women. When you dismantle those protections for women, you are exposing women to be secondary citizens, and for pharmacists and doctors and lawyers to follow through with the legal implications of that relegation of women to and girls to second-tier level citizen status. Your health is no longer the primary consideration if you could potentially be pregnant or are pregnant, because the GOP has determined that you are mere vassals for God's sacred work, and there is no longer a distinction between government and Christian churches under Republican governance. That the evangelical Christian perception, or the subset of Catholics who still believe that abortion is a moral crime, are imposing their religious conclusions on women who need access to treatment. And the might of the Catholic Church in Ireland was challenged because of what happened to one dentist, Dr. Savita Halappanavar, who was going through a much wanted pregnancy. In her 19th week, there was the unborn baby, the fetus was dying, and they informed her that the baby was dying. There was still a detectable heartbeat, and so they couldn't take action yet. Her husband recollected that she asked for a termination 3 times, and a midwife was honest with her ultimately and said, this is a Catholic hospital. You are never going to get an abortion here. And she died. Dr. Savita Halappanavar died of septic shock, a heart attack following septic shock from the infection in her womb. Her dying infected fetus caused for her heart to stop under pressure from a rampaging infection in her body that was going untreated by doctors who could have terminated her pregnancy and saved her life, but who felt that they couldn't because they felt constrained by the implication of Ireland's laws regarding pregnancy, that you have to be so certain that a woman's life is in danger before you can provide an abortion. And they weren't 100% sure. They weren't 100% sure. It's a gray area. Guessing as to someone's chances of life or death, or the strength of an infection, or the strength of their body's ability to fight off an infection. These are not easily quantifiable things. They cannot convincingly be described as a percentage that you can then easily say we are doing the right thing by women. So that covers Madonna and all of the problems involved with restricted access to needed medical care that is occurring under Christian, evangelical, Christo-fascist impulses of Republicans in Republican-governed states, where there's a Republican majority in the state legislature. Not to say everybody's a Republican. There are many Democrat voters who are similarly being oppressed. And if we remember the Civil War, which people say states' rights, and you ask them what exactly were the states' rights that were in contention for some states to leave the Union over. And the answer is very plainly the right to own and enslave other human beings in perpetuity, including enslaving their children, and therefore including incentivizing forcibly causing those women to bear children, i.e. incentivizing mass rape because you create more property for yourself in doing so. And that was what hundreds of thousands of Americans lost their lives for in defending. And there's plenty of neo-Confederates who, whether they admit it or not, want to refight that Civil War and this time be victorious in their aim. Whether they do it by stealth, whether they join a militia to accomplish their aims, whether they try to intimidate Black voters by turning up as poll watchers in defiance of a law, putting a little American flag over their number plates and standing guard at a drop box for early votes in order to intimidate potential voters who are Black, who are less likely, not guaranteed, but are significantly less likely to vote for the political party that is currently doing their level best to uphold and perpetuate and expand white supremacist dynamics, in which society is hierarchical and white men don't have to compete with people of color and don't have to compete with women for jobs in the workplace, because women will be too busy at home having all the babies that are a product of sexual activity between a man and a woman, babies that might sometimes be a product of coerced sex or incest or rape, or babies that might be a product of an undesired pregnancy from a family that is at capacity and cannot comfortably take care of any more children, but are being forced into doing so by a state government enacting laws that take away their rights to make their own family planning decisions for themselves. And that's a family issue and not just a women's issue. But women's lives are directly on the line. Family health and family financial stability is on the line as well. And there have been studies, the Turnaway study was a study of women who sought to get an abortion and who were turned away. And then you have a cohort of women turned away and a cohort of women who received an abortion. And over time in this longitudinal study, it was found to be the case in a collective sense that women who received an abortion when they asked for one had better outcomes, and their children had better educational and life goal outcomes. Because when you turn women away and say, for whatever reason, we are not providing abortions here, or you've missed the window of opportunity past the heartbeat at 6 weeks, your life is worse. Your ability to provide for your family is worse. Your own heart is worse when you have your choice taken away from you. That's intuitive, but the Turnaway study, if you wish to look it up yourself, backs up that intuition that yes, if you wanted to have an abortion and someone said, no abortion for you, you are compelled to go through these circumstances, to go through all the physical hardship associated with pregnancy and labor. If you survive that, then you have a person to provide for that you are not currently ready or willing to provide for. So good luck, baby. And good luck to you, woman, who has been torturously forced to proceed with a pregnancy against their will. Now, people who've been raped or people who are victims of incest have sometimes gone ahead with a pregnancy of their own choice. I'm not here to tell them what to do. And some people might say, how dare you even imply that it's the right thing to do for a victim of rape or incest, get an abortion? You shouldn't be putting your judgment on them. They shouldn't be contaminated by your negative association with babies born as a product of rape. That's still a child of God. Okay, sure. If you see it as a child of God and that happens to you, I'm happy to argue that all born sentient children and humans are worthy of support and in fact should have access to a basic level of medical care not only for their own sakes, but for our sakes as communities, as a society, because research also shows that crime rates go down after Medicaid access is expanded. And in states where Medicaid access hasn't been expanded, the reverse is true. Isn't that interesting? It's not just it's the right thing to do. People should have healthcare. If you take the word should out of it and you take the word entitlement out of it, it's the best thing to do to reduce crime. It's the best thing to do because it's unseemly in a wealthy society to have people die from medical bankruptcy in the street. It is unseemly. It is not just unchristian, it is inhuman to let people who live in the same country as you to die for want of a small amount of help, which would be which debt would be balanced out to society by the fact that you'd have a stronger society with less crime. And I can imagine people arguing, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't give people health care because they're threatening to commit crimes. But I'm talking about academic studies, not any individuals threatening to commit crimes unless they're given access to Medicaid. The Republican Party has a platform in which they're promising to kick people off Medicaid once they turn 90, because 90-year-olds are, of course, renowned for not needing health care anymore. What? My other two topics for today that I put in the title: constitutional democratic republics. I didn't write anything underneath it. That's okay, it speaks for itself. A lot of MAGA types will argue America is not a democracy. We yearn for authoritarian government, for a benign father figure to keep convincing us that, what did Trump say today? That other countries, he said some bad things. He said some bad things to disparage people who seek to migrate to America in an irregular fashion without the visas. People who just come across the border and perhaps take advantage of the fact that Republicans refuse to enact laws, to participate in bipartisan legislation that will devote adequate funds to courts processing migrants, because they would rather have immigration be this unsolved problem that they can still point to and say it's Democrats' fault. They would rather campaign on immigration being chaotic. So they have no incentive to help address or streamline the backed up court system in the United States. So people who present themselves at the borders, at checkpoints, and say, hello, I'm here to migrate to America, and according to your laws, I can apply as a refugee here. They can. And it's not their fault they won't be processed for 2 or 3 years. And it's not their fault that American employers will exploit them and employ them for low wages, knowing that they don't yet have certified, valid legal certification and documents for being in the country. They're still being processed. And it will take 2 or 3 years for them to get a court date for hearing for their asylum claims. So, yes, there are push and pull factors. Climate change effects on agriculture pushes people to seek to migrate to the United States if they're desperate to earn income. People who falsely believe that the United States is a wonderful place for migrants. I mean, it depends how bad your life circumstances are. The United States is still an improvement for people who are fleeing even higher levels of violence. Of course, America has high levels. The homicide rate in America is 5 times the homicide rate of equivalent wealthy nations: Australia, Canada, Japan, Switzerland. America is a highly developed nation that has such a high homicide rate because of high levels of conflictedness about whether or not to provide any type of universal benefits. It provides some benefits, but it's conflicted. So Republicans might allow some programs to come into being when they're out of office, but then they cut them where they can. They make it difficult to access. They complicate things so that fewer people have access to medical care, and that is a push factor for increasing crime rates. Republicans create chaos and mess things up on purpose in order to employ a political strategy that some refer to as pseudo-populism. When you purposefully inflict chaos and suffering on your constituents so that they will feel so unhappy, they want to find a simple answer to blame someone. And then Republicans will supply them with a simple answer, a simple misguided answer, and they'll say blame migrants. They'll find a flavor of the day to manufacture conflicted outrage and say, hop on board the moral clarity train of blame and demonize Mexican migrants, or blame and demonize gay teachers and children with gay families, or trans kids, or trans teachers. They will find anybody to, oh, my family's back, and so I'm going to have to go. Yes, pseudo-populism says it all. It's a great term. They're going to try and open the door and come in, and then they're going to be noisy. That's them. All right. Thanks for listening today, folks, and I will talk to you again soon. Drowned pool politics was going to be under Cracker Barrel, which refers to public swimming pools that were closed by racists in response to integration laws that sought to end segregation. There are officials who literally drained public pools to close them off to everybody rather than allow Black people to use those pools. That's my final point for the day. It's got so much implication. Think on it. Bye, everybody.